It's absolutely a pleasure to have you here with us today for the special dinner evening, Kant and Jay Chaudhry. In fact, just a very quick idea on the India Dialogue. So for some of you who were not there in the morning, the India Dialogue is an initiative which has been co-created by Institute for Competitiveness and USATMC, that is US Asia Technology Management Center at Stanford. And we have my partner in crime sitting here, Richard Dasher. So all of this wouldn't have been possible without his support and things. Incidentally, as part of the dialogue, we are looking at doing multiple set of things, which includes research. We are looking at publishing white papers. We are really doing the dialogues. We are doing the summit. And we are looking at expanding this program over a period of time. We had some great conversations during the day, and I do take away a lot of things, especially some of the ideas that were shared by Christian in the morning. I think we would love to fructify them. There was this Param Iyer made a few points, Amitabh Kant, and I think there is a great learning experience from all those interactions, and we look forward to really pushing it forward. But without further ado, I think we should really get into the reason why we evening. We have two of the most amazing people that you would know, one from the other side of the world, as you would call India, and one from this part of the world. Of course, he's of Indian origin, but so we have two gentlemen here, Jay Chaudhry and Amitabh Kant. In fact, don't really need any introduction, but just as a quick remark, I think Jay is possibly one of the finest entrepreneurs this country has produced, and of course, somebody who created Zscaler, and he has many other things under the belt. But for the kind of impact that he's been able to create with Zscaler is absolutely tremendous. His work in India, especially his philanthropic work in India, is absolutely... I think what is most inspiring about Jay is that he's a first-generation entrepreneur, comes from a very humble background, to what he has been able to achieve, and the way he has been able to create an impact is impeccable. But the other person who's there with us, as I said in the morning, he has done some amazing work with the government of India. He's been the person who's been instrumental about doing ease of doing business to God's own country, to aspirational district program, to so many things. In fact, if there is somebody who's been an impact leader in many, many ways in the country, then it has to be Amitabh Kant. But as I said in the morning as well, his claim to fame does not happen because of what he has done with the government. It happens because he's my co-author. So we just, as we said, it's the book. The title of the conference is The Elephant Moves. And then, of course, the book is also The Elephant Moves. Do have a look at it. And we have a very special person here, Satyan Gajwani, who's going to be moderating. In fact, I do not know if any one of you know about Satyam. I'm sure you know about him. In fact, just an accidental discovery. Just about 10 days back when I realized that Satyan lives in the area. And I've known Satyan for about 10 years, but off and on we have been meeting at some, occasions or whatever. And then I realized, oh, he's just next door. I should really give him a call. And he kindly accepted, relented, or whatever you might want to say, and he's here to moderate this session for us. Satyan is the vice chairman, if I get it right, for the Times of India group in India. So if you do not know about Times of India group, they run some oddball newspapers called Economic Times and Times of India and whatever. So possibly the largest news group in the country that you can actually know of. They have been somebody who's been the pillar of democracy in many, many ways, as you might actually say. So Satyan, Mr. Amitabh Kant, Mr. Jay Chaudhry, if you could actually join us on the stage, please. Satyan, for you to take the lead.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you for the introduction. And Amitabh, Jay, thank you so much for joining us. It's a real honor to be able to be here and speak with both of you. I was going to give an introduction, but Amit did it far better than I could ever have done. But he did allude to something, Jay, about your background, and I think it'd be wonderful for everyone to hear a little bit about your story. You're a successful American CEO, but with some very interesting upbringings. Maybe you can just spend a couple minutes and tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, well, my story is that the result of some of the wonderful work India has done with free education, and then some of the great opportunities in America. I was born in a tiny village in the foothills of the Himalayas on the border of Punjab and Himachal. Small-scale farming family. We got electricity after I finished my 8th grade, running water after I finished my 10th grade. I just loved to study. School was free. And then I got into IITs by accident. I didn't know IITs existed. Just stumbled across it. Did my bachelor's, then came to the US, like lots of Indian students came, did my master's, did software development for a few years, then by accident moved to sales in IBM. It was an accident. I worked for a small company in Cincinnati, Ohio. One day, the sales engineer called in sick, and my boss said, "You wrote the system, why don't you do a demo?" I did a customer demo. It went well. I said, that's a lot more fun than writing code. Okay. So I called IBM, and they hired me in sales. That was a wonderful training ground. And after IBM, Unisys, a couple of companies, I got the next big move in late 96 when Mark Andreessen had just taken this company called Netscape public. Mozilla browser was born. I was reading about it. I loved it. And I said, if this thing should take off, because you can simply access information from a browser. And if it does take off, then everything connects to everything. What will happen to cybersecurity? So let's think about cybersecurity. So I wanted to do a company to secure these enterprises. I had no background of entrepreneurship in my family, so this was the first idea. A little crazy idea, man. I spent about 3 months looking for VC funding in Atlanta. They all said, "What experience do you have in this area?" Then my wife and I talked. She's Jyoti. She's also a finance background, IT background. And I said, the only way we can do this stuff is if we put our life saving the line and go with it. And she thought for a day or so, then she said, go. And to make things more interesting, I said, we have only so much money. Why don't you quit your job so we do it together? The notion was, burn the bridges, there's no turning back. That's how the first startup was done. The business took off. It got acquired by a large company called Fireside. Then stock went through the roof. 70 of my 80 employees were millionaires after that. Then I had plenty of liquidity. And I said, wow, this must be a fluke because startups are supposed to be hard. This was easy. So let's try to do it again. And this time we said we can only put so much money in one company. Let's do multiple. But let's do it like having kids. You stagger them 1 or 2 years apart. So we did 3 companies. One for e-procurement ASP, Code Harbor, one for email security called Cypher Trust, and one for wireless security called Air Defense. Good luck, good timing, great team. They all became successful. And fast forward to 2007, I said, I don't want to do one more startup and sell it. Enough. Let's do something big. Let's do something lasting. And I said, what's the next big thing for the next 20 years? You could see application are moved to the cloud. I was using Salesforce and NetSuite since year 2001 for all of my startups. I was a big fan of it. AWS was just launched. iPhone was just announced in 2007, big screen. I said, this perfect world, every information is out there. We are out there. So if you need to secure it, you can't be doing firewalls. Where are you going to put these firewalls in the cloud? So let's do something totally different. Let's reimagine the network. Let's reimagine security. So we kind of built, I may call a switchboard. A user comes to us, we connect to the right application, right service, no firewalls. You can go on any network. That's how Zscaler was born. We faced a lot of resistance for the first several years. People, what do you mean you're crazy about this? We persisted. Today we are a public company with a $33 billion market cap. We got 7,000 employees. About 40% of the employees are in India, so a lot of work. I opened the Bangalore office before I opened the Silicon Valley office. We're doing well. 40+% of Fortune 500 companies are customer. Cyber is fundamental. It's needed. So
it's amazing.
We are having fun and learning along the way. Sorry if it's a long time.
I feel very humbled being up here because your story is just incredible, and Amitabh needs very little introduction, but Amitabh is, for those who live under a rock, has been one of the forces that's driven so much of digital innovation in India that is now powering hundreds of millions of people to have new forms of lifestyle and connectivity. But Amitabh, I want to ask you a question. When you hear about Jay's story, how does it make you feel? And the reason I'm asking it is, no doubt he's one of the most amazing success stories here amongst many others. I'm sure everyone in this room can name 10 really successful stories that give us a lot of pride as Indians being successful here. But as the enabler of digital connectivity in India and the driver of so much productivity in the country, is there a part of you that feels like, how do we do more to enable talent like Jay to build back at home, build in India, to not have to leave to come to America for grander postures? How does this make you feel when you hear about stories like his?
So Jay's story is a phenomenal story. It's very inspiring, and it makes even an old foggy like me to think of becoming a young startup entrepreneur. So there were very, very few opportunities when we were growing up. So you had no other option but to join the government. And but it's in the ecosystem here that it enables entrepreneurship to grow and blossom. And I think that's been the attempt of Prime Minister Modi in recent times, that when we started the Startup India movement in 2016 January, there were just about 350 odd startups. Today we have 110,000 startups. We have about 120 unicorns. Many of them are flourishing. And this whole quantum leap that India has taken, from identity to bank accounts, and we've done it to population scale, opening 550 million bank accounts in 2 years' time, and then embedding them with both identity and mobile number, taking it to credit, then ensuring that there is wealth creation through this, and then insurance. All this is happening in 30. You can do a stock market transaction in 30 seconds. You can buy an insurance policy in 1 minute in India. You do all your just about all your fast payments. 120 billion transaction in last year. India having about 50% of the real-time fast payment in the world today. The next is China with about 12% or something. So that's been a phenomenal technological leapfrogging which India has done. And this throws up enormous opportunities for people like Jay for India, because cybersecurity is going to be the big thing in India. So his next billion will be made in India. It's going to throw up massive, massive opportunities. And I think what is happening in India is that young people suddenly realize that there's so much of momentum. India's opened up all these areas. It's opened up space sector for private sector.
Yep.
It's opened up geospatial sector. It's opened up drones, robotics. All these sectors have just been opened up enormously for the young Indian entrepreneurs. So when you talk to them, it's so inspiring to see young Indian entrepreneurs actually disrupting the world. For them, the market is not the 1.4 billion people of India. The market is the next 4 to 5 billion people of the world who are going to move from poverty to middle class. So, if what India has done is, in terms of digital, the whole digital infrastructure that India has built up. But if you look at the world today, 4 billion people in the world do not even have a digital identity. There are 2 billion people who do not have a bank account. There are 133 countries who do not have a fast payment. And for all the young Indian entrepreneurs, that's the big market. And that's what India is doing. So, imagine India's UPI system spreading from India to France, to South Africa, to Latin America, to Singapore. That's all happened in the last 3 to 4 years of India. And that's going to spread all over. And during G20, when we accepted both the definition and the framework of digital public infrastructure, it was very clear that the future is going to be open source, it'll be open API, it'll be globally interoperable. And therefore, the digital public infrastructure, when you combine it with artificial intelligence and generative AI, which India is doing. Look at the power of Jugalbandi, the Bhashni app, which is enabling people in rural India. India has 1,400 dialects. It has 22 official language, but somebody sitting in a rural area in Nagaland can use the local dialect to fill up the central scheme or the government scheme, take his way through using artificial intelligence, get access to all the government schemes, and get sanctions and approvals all on the basis of his local dialect, his voice. He doesn't even have to write anything. That's the power of technology in India today. The combination of DPI with artificial intelligence has provided power to the 1.4 billion people of India.
It's just incredible. So I need to ask you something, okay? We look usually at startups as drivers of innovation. Many people here who work at big companies can talk about how hard it is to do disruptive stuff inside a big company. How did you get so much done in government, which is viewed as probably the hardest place to drive innovation? I mean, the way you talk is amazing, but to actually navigate public systems to deploy at this scale, this level of innovation, how do you, I mean, this is like, I want to take notes for how one executes in a system that has traditionally always been perceived as bureaucratic and slow. I mean, there's classic stories about Indian bureaucracy being painful, and yet today, it's a global benchmark for how a government can coexist with private sector and yet still drive innovation. How did you do it? I mean, I really just want to understand practically, how did you do it?
So Satyan, you know, when I got into the service, I landed up in Kerala, Kada, which I had not bargained for, and there was a communist government there. And pretty early in my career, I landed up into a major problem, and with the chief minister of the state, and I was without a posting for about almost 11 months, and I thought that was the end of my career. And you know, I demolished about 400, when I was a district collector, I demolished about 400 buildings. One of the guys who was building hotel I demolished had gone on to become the deputy chief minister. And I thought that was the end of my career. And you know, as a punishment posting, I got posted as secretary tourism, which nobody wanted to go. Nobody had heard of Kerala. Everybody had heard of Rajasthan or Kashmir. Everybody used to go there. Nobody had heard of Kerala then. They posted me as a punishment posting, but I took that as an opportunity. And I built up Kerala. You know, I went back to the roots of Kerala, and I, you know, developed products which nobody had heard of then. The backwaters of Kerala, the houseboats on which not a single nail is used. I went back to the mother of martial art, Kalripet. I went back to all these art forms, Tayyam, Kathakali, Mohiniyattam, and I went back to the traditional Kerala cuisine, the traditional Kerala architecture, and I differentiated Kerala from the rest of the world. And you know, when you combine it with high rates of literacy and unique social development, National Geographic Traveler termed it as one of the unique, they termed it as one of the 10 exotic paradises in the world, and Kerala never looked back. I took it from a $20 destination to a $600 destination overnight with these new products by taking it to the roots of Kerala. And then, you know, one fine day I get a call. I was a young officer. I get a call that the principal secretary to the Prime Minister wants to talk to you. And I was sleeping at home, and Mr. Brajesh Mishra came online and said, Prime Minister wants to have a holiday in Kerala for 8 days, and you'll be the host. He will not meet the chief minister, he'll not meet panchayat leaders, you'll host him. So I kept it, you know, I hosted Mr. Vajpayee in the backwaters of Kerala in Kumaragam for 8 days. And, you know, one fine day, Mr. Vajpayee, I used to host him for lunch, dinner. One fine day, he asked me, you know, Mr. Brajesh Mishra tells Mr. Vajpayee on the dinner table, we used to just 5 or 6 people. He said, Saab, is ladke ko Delhi lana hai, we have to get him to Delhi. So Mr. Vajpayee said that, have you applied for Government of India? I said, no sir, मैंने तो नहीं apply किया. तो Mr. Vajpayee said, नहीं, बहुत अच्छा किया. अगर तुम apply करते तो ब्रजेश मिश्रा तुम्हें tourism के बदले women and child welfare में भेजें. He would send you from. So that was the end of the story. I applied after a year, and after a year and 2 months, and I was to go to Finance Ministry. The Civil Services Board had selected me to go there, and then Mr. Brajesh Mishra again calls me up and said, have you applied for Delhi? I said, yes, sir. So he said, you're going to tourism. I said, sir, there's no vacancy. But he said, no, we are creating a vacancy for you. And they took the officer who was there and posted her to labor and created that post for me and put me there. But as soon as I landed, within 2 days of that, the Twin Tower blast happened in New York. The war in Afghanistan happened. the attack on our parliament happened and we had 10% hotel occupancy. At the peak of that crisis, when Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia all had ended their marketing, we launched Incredible India campaign. And that took tourism to a high. And that led to a marketing-led strategy which led to demand creation. And that led to new airports being created, new hotels coming up, and the entire tourism infrastructure being built up. And from there on, whether it was... from there on, whether it was Delhi-Mumbai corridor or Make in India or Startup India, I've always thought that, you should always think population scale, because India gives you that opportunity to do disruption at population scale and at costs which the world has never seen. You can bring down costs and the possibility of disrupting in India is enormous.
It's incredible.
Absolutely.
So, 20 years ago, you hosted the Prime Minister in Kerala. Just most recently, you've now been the host of the G20 in India. Tell us how it went. What are the major takeaways, the key insights from it that you're most excited about going forward?
So G20 was very complex. G20 was complex because when India took over G20 presidency, the world, it was the post-COVID era. So you'd seen 200 million people go below the poverty line, 100 million people had lost their jobs. And we were hosting it in the background of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, which was very tough. And in a multilateral forum like G20, you have to bring consensus.
Yep.
And that's why multilateralism has been on a retreat. The United Nations has been a miserable failure in all these crises because there's been no consensus. So the challenge, I didn't even know that what was the job of Sherpa when I was appointed, but Sherpa's job is to take the leader on top of the Mount Everest. And therefore, the chances of my failure were very, very high. Now, India was able to bring consensus on a range of issues from, SDG goals to driving growth to women-led development to reforms of the multilateral financial institutions. All these issues, 83 paras, we brought consensus across the world. And India is the only country which had this ability to straddle through the world of G7, emerging markets, Russia, China, all of them, we brought consensus. But the toughest para was the Russia-Ukraine war.
Of course.
And that led us to negotiate for 300 hours. So the smartest thing we did was that we took all the Sherpas about 100 kilometers away from Delhi, locked them up in a golf resort called ITC Classic. When we started negotiating this, we said no mobiles are allowed because any leakage of information would have led to collapse. So we took, and these were always senior people, they were the level of national security advisors and cabinet secretaries. We locked them up, no mobiles allowed. We negotiated 300 rounds on one para. 300 rounds, 250 rounds of bilateral discussions, 16 drafts failed, and the 17th draft, finally we took it. We took a lot of risk. We took a lot of imaginative decision making. We were very bold, gutsy, courageous, largely because the Prime Minister said that we have to achieve consensus, we have to be ambitious, we have to be action-oriented. We achieved it.
Amazing, amazing. I want to talk a little bit about the digital infrastructure because I think today it is a representation of India's strength at a global level with everything from starting from Aadhaar to UPI to accounts aggregator and so much more that India's stack is now a real thing. Jay and I spoke about this a little bit briefly, but India has been very receptive to technological innovation and in the enablement that it provides. In other markets, we see a lot more conservatism about new technology because of things like privacy and security and whatnot. Now, as we see this level of scale of digital infrastructure in place, Jay, how do you think India should be thinking about some of the elements around security, privacy, and sort of the resilience of a very fast-moving and evolving stack?
So first of all, actually, India has thought through these things pretty well. I tell you what sets India apart. India is bringing some of the best brains together to put some of these key stack pieces in place. But India government doesn't run everything. Actually, the private sector gets involved. It sets standards, which is actually wonderful. Otherwise, think of the US. It's all private sector. The big companies take over. They want to have monopolies out there. Okay. Indian government has actually tried to avoid monopolies and having all these things available out there, which is actually a wonderful thing, but they're not running and owning the stuff. That's very, very important. So that's one part. Two, many times when you start from a clean slate, you can actually leapfrog ahead.
Yeah.
When you actually have some of the pieces in place, right? I used to go to India and say, man, when will India start using credit cards? Okay. And then suddenly it's like credit cards are gone. Here's all these online payments. I mean, it's wonderful. I used to worry about for corruption, for example. We know there's a lot of corruption that used to be in India, and cash was a big source of corruption. Once you start having these online payment systems, a lot of stuff goes away. So I think a lot of these things are in place. I do worry about the amount of data that's sitting online. I was in India about 4 weeks ago. I spent a week talking to lots of private sector and talking to a bunch of state governments in UP and Delhi and Karnataka and Bhubaneswar and all. They're making tremendous progress. All the land records, everything is going online. What fascinated me was two chief ministers, one in UP and one in Bhubaneswar. They built the chief minister's dashboard. This dashboard is really to approve. Remember, India has not these files, file approved currently, and it goes from person A to B to C. There are 20 steps involved, and people will be sitting on these files. They won't go unless you bribe them or whatever. And all these things are automated. There's workflow involved, literally online e-signatures, move from place to place. And what will chief minister's dashboard do? It could tell the chief minister what's sitting where, what, why. I mean, those are amazing things. Probably even private companies don't have some kind of sophistication like that. That's then one part. But I think we do need to worry about cyber part of it. To me personally, I owe so much to India, what India has done for me. Without free education, IITs and all that stuff, nothing would have happened. I would be sitting in probably Himachal and doing some kind of farming out there. So, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I feel like a lot to give back. So for me to help India in the cyberspace is not just business. It's essentially giving back to the country. So we've done a number of projects there. First of all, starting the company in India with about 40% of our employees sitting in India. It has been wonderful. It's also there's lots of young, ambitious people who want to do something. Now, you have to interview 100 people to get 5 right, okay? There are lots of them, but once you get them, they do a lot of good work. We have been doing a fair amount of work in the private sector. For example, some of these Indian banks are so impressive. ICICI, HDFC Bank, they are our customers. They are doing faster, better, a more competitive work than some of the biggest banks in New York. These guys want to open micro branches in rural India, where the branch can be opened up literally in a matter of, from IT point of view, in days, not in months. So we're involved with the branch can be set up. The branch essentially, they want to be cashless branches because cash is becoming, who cares? But lots of people in rural India don't feel comfortable in going and doing stuff on their phone. They come to a little branch in a remote village, and there's a bank employee or two sitting there. They got a simple Android tablet to be able to do stuff. That tablet is powered by 4G or 5G connection. It talks to Zscaler cloud service, which is a switchboard, and then connects to whatever transaction need to be done. These branches, thousands of them, can be opened literally at a fast pace that can't be done anywhere else. Those are the kind of secure communication we are doing with some of the banks. And there's a lot of IoT, OT that needs to be done in India. If you think about all, the world will have trillions of IoT devices out there. These devices collect telemetry because that's how the world is going to work. That telemetry tells you what's going on. How do you do preventive maintenance? You're figuring all the stuff. How do you make sure that the telemetry goes to the right place? So we're working with a number of companies doing that. At the state level, we just started a project with our Ministry of Finance. How do you make sure secure communication can happen from wherever the employees are, end-to-end communication? So I don't need to go into all the details, but opportunity is tremendous. We're trying to do, maybe you can help us, we can move it at a larger scale to the government, because we have a lot of good credibility with Aadhaar cards of the world. But the challenge with all these digital assets is anybody sitting anywhere in the world can get to anything. And no software is kind of safe from vulnerabilities. Every software has bugs. It's a matter of when do you discover them. So being able to really come up with better security, I think a lot can be done, and I'll be looking forward to doing more for India.
So I really think Jay is wasting his time
I agree.
in Silicon Valley. He should relocate to India.
Jay, can you commit on this stage? You're ready to make the move?
So because
You can do it from anywhere these days.
No. I'm saying this because what India has done is remarkable, and I said this in the morning that actually for about 4.5 years I've not used my debit credit card. I've not been to a physical bank. I've not used a checkbook. I've not even been to an ATM machine.
Yes.
But my mobile is my virtual bank. The only time I use a credit card is when I come to San Francisco. And that's why India could do 2.2 billion COVID vaccinations, which is all paperless, cashless. And, whereas in America, it was all paperwork. And we transfer, in about thousands of schemes, we transfer money straight into the bank account of the beneficiaries without any single paisa of leakage. So India has really been transformational, but we are throwing up so much of data, enormous amount of data, which, when you use that data in an anonymized form, you can use it for purposes of AI. India will find solutions for many of our own challenges of cancer, of TB, of many of the challenges of improving learning outcomes and health outcomes. And therefore, nowhere can you get this kind of huge data and use cases for providing solutions to the challenges of the world.
Definitely.
Maybe I'll make a comment or two about entrepreneurship here, what can be done. The biggest thing I learned in my life is to be self-confident and self-critical at the same time. It keeps you grounded, okay? So when we do our meetings, when I run my business, we spend 5 minutes patting on the back for great things. Then we spend 55 minutes figuring out, poking holes and say, how do we do a better job? There's a lot to be proud of in India. Then I wonder and say, India is doing well, startup, but Israel is doing much better than India when it comes to the startup ecosystem. Look at the number of people they have, the number of companies they come. They're far more successful. What can we learn from Israel? What can India do better? I'll give you my perspective. A lot of you are entrepreneurs here, right? Everything takes a little bit of time. Now, Israel started years and years ago. They're ahead of us. There was a lot of Israeli connection. The Israeli lobby actually helped a lot. There's so many groups in the US where it brings them together to help each other. And we had done a bunch of things here too. So it's all coming together. I think it should happen. But one of the biggest things Israel has done, a lot of development all happens in Israel. The sales leaders are sitting here in the valley from day one. They understand what the market wants. The products get built actually with first market being in mind as American market. It's the biggest market. And the European market is not very different. So they're able to succeed. I think India has seen some successes, but in the software world, India probably has far, far more potential. Look in the services world today. Indian system integrators, Wipros of the world, TCS of the world have done a pretty good job. But they're still largely services oriented. There's companies coming, but India has a potential. Probably there's more exchange. I know, MR, you are driving some of those initiatives. We are being able to expose some of those young entrepreneurs in India with some of the opportunity, the marketing. India lacks exposure to Western marketing and how to sell in this market. If you're able to solve that problem, there's no reason why we shouldn't be creating some of the very large software companies that are based in India and are able to sell everywhere around the globe. Would you?
No, I totally agree. And I'm a great believer that actually the challenge for India is to become a great manufacturing nation. India's challenge is to really penetrate global markets, and exports are critical. and really to raise agriculture productivity, because we have a very vast segment of our population working in agriculture, and that can only happen if you do sustainable, good, really smart urbanization in the years to come. So there are many challenges.
Absolutely, but those are the opportunities.
Yeah, those are huge opportunities.
I want to switch tacks for a second. I was talking with Asha just 20 minutes ago, and she was referencing somebody else here, and she said, they live here more or less.
Sure.
And I found this statement so interesting because I think that there's a common thread that you'll find amongst Indians who grew up in India, moved to America, became very successful, like Asha, but feel very emotionally and oftentimes logistically connected back to India. The first thing Jay told us was about how he has 40% of his team back in India. There's a common thread that I find, and so the Times of India has obviously a large media footprint in India, but we connect very heavily with the non-resident Indian population as well. We run things like Willow TV, which people watch cricket in America, and so we do a lot for the non-resident population. But there's a common thread we find, which is something between guilt and excitement, a desire for Indians in America to do more back home and figure out how they can contribute back towards India and always have one foot back in India, even as they build roots here. Amitabh, what would be your advice for Indians here in America to be able to do more back for India?
Well, I think India is a land of great opportunities. I mean, the fact that in the midst of global slowdown, we've had 3 quarters of successive quarters of 8% growth. Let me tell you that we will be the 3rd largest economy in the world in another 3 to 4 years' time, surpassing Japan and Germany. And I have no doubt, because we have a very young population, I mean, our average age of the population is just 28, we have very low dependency burden. We are heading in the long run to be a $35 trillion economy by the time we become 2047, in 2047. So the opportunities are huge. I mean, whether you look at climate, renewable energy, battery storage, electric vehicles, green hydrogen. I mean, all these are opportunities, or the massive amount of disruption has to take place. And, India will actually have to become, when it moves from fossil fuel, where we import 180 billion, we will be exporting energy by 2047 using the power of our renewables. We're the only country which has done 187 gigawatt of renewables. So, massive opportunity. No other country will give you that opportunity which India has. No country in the world will give you the skilled manpower which India has. And no country in the world will give you this huge amount of impetus to disruption and a tremendous amount of opportunities, which many of our startups have demonstrated in recent times. So I think the opportunity,
so what can Jay do?
The opportunity really be to spot good entrepreneurs, and exactly what Asha is doing. I mean, Asha is a great example of what she's doing, putting resources into young entrepreneurs in India. I mean, there's a greater connect between Silicon Valley and Bangalore than between Silicon Valley and Washington.
Yeah.
Let me tell you that.
Absolutely.
And I'm a great believer that actually a lot of this growth and impetus that has taken place in Bangalore, which has become a tremendously exciting place, is because of this very close bonding with the Silicon Valley. Yeah. So many more of you should actually be looking at great opportunities in many, many areas of growth in the coming years.
No, I find the biggest leaders of the biggest companies out here that are Indian are dying to find ways to do more back home. And they're just dying to find ways to contribute. So I think this is one of those forums that's a fantastic opportunity to build some of those bridges. I think you're absolutely right. The Bay Area and Bangalore are better connected than people realize.
The challenge for India is really to improve, learning outcomes, health outcomes, nutritional standards. Those can't be done onto that population scale without technology. Mm-hmm. And it can't be done, if you want to do it at population scale, it has to be technology-based. Yeah. And I think that's where, working in partnership with many top-class Indians based in Silicon Valley will really drive growth. And once they do that in India, you will get the model for cracking it in other parts of the world.
Amazing.
Now, you're talking about a broad scale. I'll give you my little bit narrow view of when I look at engineers, software developers I meet in India, because we need lots of them. I think channeling the energy and power of Indian youth, we probably could do a lot more work. Now, this is, again, trying to figure out things can be done better. Today, India produces lots of engineers, but a very small number are actually able to work in the company once they come out. So, but once you get them moving, they start doing good work. So we should be thinking about how do we really make them more productive, more useful. Some of the things we're trying to do out of our business necessity. We'll go and hire these people. Then we'll do a 6-month special training program before they can do anything for us. Trying to line up with some of these schools out there and say, let's really give special courses. So schools are actually open. Some of these companies like Wipro of the world do the same thing. So we're learning and saying, I'm going to create a special course that'll be taught in this engineering school. So people who are coming out are better. And as you start seeing it, everyone watches those success stories. They start seeing what can be done. I think India needs to get beyond Bombay and Bangalore if the next tier cities are actually able to offer some of these opportunities. It becomes a good thing. One of the things we decided was, I thought, and Bangalore is great, but Bangalore is like Silicon Valley. It's a tough place, everything, all job retention. People can leave and go and get across the street, get 20% raise tomorrow. So I said, we're going to go and experiment in Chandigarh. I happen to know some of the people there, and we opened an office. We got about 1,500 people in Chandigarh. So we are a big brand. Now, what it's done is certainly people are realizing that this kind of stuff can be done. So when you did one family, the 20 other family learn about it. They all get inspiration. Things start happening. And I think that's what's happening in India. We need to figure out how do you really do it even bigger and larger scale. I'll tell you an interesting story. I was hiring people. This was even in Bangalore when I started the company in 2008. And I hired these people, and this guy said, well, I like what you want to do, but my dad tells me that you really need to work for someone like IBM. Who is this Zscaler company? I said, we are doing more exciting work. He said, Nani, my dad says if you work for IBM, you'll get married in a better family because they'll think about he's working for IBM. That was the mindset. I had one other guy I was trying to hire, and this was in Chandigarh, in finance. I said, we'll give you this much cash compensation and we'll give you stock options. He said, no, I don't care about stock option. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. Just let me cash. Okay. And I said, okay, I gave him what he needed. I gave him options too. I said, one day you'll probably appreciate it. But now with success stories like Zscaler sitting in India in different places, it is actually becoming a little bit inspiration, and people want to work for some of these companies out there. They're finding that the private sector can do a lot. You need to work hard. Changing that mindset has helped. And maybe you can see the government sector used to be relatively poor. Even schools and all, the teacher goes, sits there, coffee, samosas here and there, and then you moved on. Right? In private sector, you have to work hard. You do, but mindset is changing in India. It's great.
So there's a, for instance, there's a startup called Zscaler. I don't know what's its relationship with you, but it's
nothing.
But Zscaler, what it does, India needs Indian startups need about million product developers. There's a severe shortage of product developers.
Yep.
There's a shortage of prompt engineers. There's a shortage of data scientists. There's a shortage of AI engineers. There's a shortage of machine learners. Severe shortage. So what Zscaler did was to do this short 3.5 to 4 months course. And that is for all engineers coming out of triple IITs and engineering colleges, has led to an increase in their salaries by 10x.
We've hired some
10x
from
more.
them.
And Zscaler is a great example of a young startup which has completely, not only are they getting 10x, they're getting better matrimonial proposals.
And that's the real benchmark here for success. Listen, I want to open this up. I mean, I could talk to you guys for hours, and you're both incredible speakers, but we have a great opportunity here. I'd love to open it up to the audience for some questions you guys may have. Please.
Yeah, so just
Wait, you're not allowed to talk without a mic.
Well, thank you very much, and actually brings back quite a lot of memories from 5 years ago when I was in India for 14 months on the Sustainable Development Goals. So speaking of the potential of India, and also brings to mind Kejriwal's statement late 2019 that if everyone in India follows the constitution in spirit, we'd be the greatest country in the world. So what do you feel as the most immediate impediments to realizing the country's full potential by mid-century? Like what, say that's within the next, with this election coming up, say the next 100 days, like what would you believe need to be done most immediately that would unlock the greatest potential?
You're asking that?
No.
It's definitely for you, Amitabh.
All three of you, yeah.
None of us are qualified as much as you.
Okay. So, to my mind, and I said this in the morning, that actually, in the next, another 15 years later, India will be providing 30% of the skilled manpower to the world. I mean, there will be no nurses, no doctors, there'll be no plumbers, there'll be no tailors, there'll be no, dentists available in America and Europe. You're all aging population, definitely not in Japan. It's all aging population, whereas India will be a young population. If 30% of the skilled manpower is to be provided by India, I think the most critical thing is to improve learning outcomes, which is very, very challenging. And learning outcomes means that you have to be, you have to keep, it can't be that you're in class 10th and you're not able to solve class 4th maths. That's important. So you have to ensure that everybody rises with, as the boat of growth goes up, learning outcomes improve. 167 million people go below the poverty line because of lack of good health. So health outcomes is critical. And one of the great things India has done is to have this insurance, health insurance for 500 million people, which is totally digital. But improving health outcomes is very critical. And I think the government has put a lot of focus on skilling now. So skilled manpower, learning outcomes, health outcomes are really the key for the next 2 to 3 decades for India to accelerate the pace of its growth to consistent levels of 9 to 10% year after year, year after year, year after year.
That's great.
Yeah.
Amitabh, this is great. Jagjit Nanda, I'm a faculty researcher at Stanford on sustainable energy. Just continuing what Arun presented in this morning, I would like to know what we are doing in India. Obviously, people like me are wholly ingrained there, what's happening, but know your thoughts on some of the mistakes that we did in terms of technological innovation and term at the cost of sustainability. And it's not completely sustainable, and we're trying to fix that. So my question is, what are the lessons learned in sustainable agriculture, which is a big issue in terms of challenges and energy technologies and battery in a sustainable way, given our very diverse and heterogeneous states with different ecosystem, which is very unique. I give you a simple example where I talk to my colleagues here, being 25 years, that we used to have, I come from Odisha, and then we used to have packaging instead of plastic, we have these palm leaves, and they used to make these nice boxes and give you sweets. That's sustainable. Banana, coconut. I used to explain here, but somehow we have to get back to that kind of ecosystem that we have lost because of plastics, polymers, and all these things. I'd like to know, sometimes from people like you who are the first-hand information, how we can contribute and how can we have a solution mentality and come back to that innovation system which we have lost and blindly following someone. Like we're talking about upscaling of polymers. Come on, I'm a scientist. We create this plastic innovation and then going that. So yeah, Amit, I'll listen to you. Yeah, sure.
That's for Jay?
No, that's for you.
So you want me to keep getting grilled? Okay, so I think the most important thing for India is to do good, sustainable urbanization on the back of public transportation and make cities for walking and cycling. If you do not do good, sustainable urbanization, because India is going to see 500 million people getting into the process of urbanization, that's critical. And secondly, I think on agriculture, we were short of food at one point of time, and therefore we went in for rice and wheat. We went in for water-consuming crop. But today we have excess production of rice and wheat, which is stored in Food Corporation of India. We need to push for horticulture, floriculture, dairy farming, etc., and push for millets and pulses growing, which are less water-consuming crops. And because in a place like Punjab, you've gone so deep below that you're taking out chemicals rather than water, and we are exporting virtual water in the form of basmati. So these are two critical things to my mind, which are very important for India to do.
Please.
Hello, my name is Dina Gupt.
And please, next question is for Jay.
So,
You're going to make a
This is the fun of being the moderator is the best that way.
thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate your
So
sharing.
incidentally, for that agriculture thing, the expert is Professor Ramesh Chand, who's here. He's my guru in agriculture.
So,
Mic's not on here, please.
So
we
can
go.
we just finish it in the next 5 minutes? The dinner is going to be served fairly quickly.
We got
please.
1, 2, and then we'll wrap it.
Maybe
if
let's
it's
take the
okay.
questions together if
All right.
possible.
Or we'll go fast.
so I can actually relate to Jazz background. Actually, I come from very humble background, and I think I can see. I've been in Google for 16 years now, but I would say it's a lucky kind of that I could come here. My question is actually, we know the quality of education in India is actually Jazz described. It's not great actually, and I got first-hand experience of the quality of education here after actually I did some courses here. My question is, what exactly we are doing to actually make this young generation really really useful to the society, to the industry? We should not be like interviewing 100 people. We should be, and picking of 5, we should be like picking
Dina, please be quick.
directly from the college, actually. Thank you.
So, actually, in today's India, let me respond to this question. I think it's an important question. There are only 2 classes of people who are really excelling in India, and people who come from humble background like you do. And they're excelling. Just giving you examples after examples I can give you, but a classic example of this person who's scored two centuries in one cricket match, Jaiswal, whose father sells gulgappas. And, but his passion was that his son must become an outstanding cricketer, and took him to the coaching every day. And at the age of 21, he's become the best player in India today. And this guy, he's just bought his father the first flat for 6.5, 7 crores in Mumbai. So this is with a completely humble background. And the second class of people who are, and in every single field this is happening. And it's not the urban middle class India which is doing well, it's people who are coming from very humble background who are excelling in everything. And the second other big thing that's happening in India is that women are out excelling men in every walk of life, every competitive exam. Every competitive exam, you take it from the 10th class to the IS exam, women are beating men in every exam. My college, which is supposed to be the best college, St. Stephen's College, when I went and did economics honors, it was an all-male bastion. By the time my daughter went there, 85% of the students on merit were all girls. All girls. And the principal of St. Stephen's said that to ensure that it remains a co-ed college, you have to give 10% extra marks to boys.
Amazing.
Okay,
There's a question.
one question here.
I don't know who's talking.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay. I mean, I should
So-
cut the line, but
So the way the conversation has happened, it looked like to me that Jay is saying that private businesses are very successful in America, and government is very successful by Amitabh's account in India.
No.
What?
I never said that. And
So-
actually,
So
The
being a
private
journalist,
sector-
I always interpret things the way.
This is the problem with media.
So, what I'm asked, my question is this: that what we can learn from each other, because Indians, there's a misnomer or whatever is the true thing that Indians are very successful when they leave the country, like you, Jay, and Indian government has changed something what was in the private domain of technology, bringing it to the public life. What we can learn from each other. You gave the example of COVID. We all had COVID vaccination app on this thing. We fixed up the appointment. We went there. We got the vaccination. We got the certificate. In America, you have the paperwork and standing in the queue, and the beer was given as an incentive to stand in that queue. So that's the difference that I'm talking about. What we can learn from each other is what both of you can comment.
But I just want to jump in here, and so that you don't have to answer every question. But there's a generational difference, and I think this is the important thing. And we see it. We fund and we work with a lot of startups in India. When I started working in India 15, 20 years ago, there was a default to try to find an opportunity in America. And it's totally changed. And I think about it from Jay's time. Jay moved to America because that was the only option to make a real career. Today, that is not the case. Mukesh is sitting here today. Where are you? Where'd you go? He was sitting here until like 5 minutes ago. But Mukesh is one of those classic examples of true successful entrepreneurs in India. And I just think, today, yes, the leaders of Google and Microsoft and Jay and whatnot are of Indian origin. But, the question you should ask is in 20 years, how do we think about that analogy? Because the 25-year-old today in India is definitely seeing more opportunity than Jay did at 25. And I think there's a generational element here
Absolutely.
too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Amit, can I? Yeah. So I just have I don't have a profound question.
It's just called microphone hostage.
Yeah,
Whoever has the mic.
It's a very simple question to
1 second.
Jay.
But Amit, is Satyam moderating or are you moderating?
I'm just the puppet, it seems. But yeah.
So I don't have a profound question. I have a question to Jay. I assume you're from Himachal.
Yes.
Right? So, have you ever thought about doing, rather than at the meta level, India level, have you ever thought of doing anything for Himachal, a state which offers so much opportunity, but a lot of people are just leaving Himachal because they don't have opportunities there. And it's a state which has very little poverty, good education, as opposed to other states. Have you ever thought of doing anything back in Himachal?
Yes. And so I'll tell you, you somehow need to look at different things. So I'll give you a few examples. I tell you the first fascinating example. You do based on what you know where you come from. When I went to my primary school in India, we used to go and get water from the well. Students, the first job for 5 students are get water, put it in a little bit steel tank, and that's what we drank all day long. And by noon, it used to be pretty damn hot. But at least you had water. So early on, this was about starting early on. After I sold my first company, I found about 300 schools around Himachal and say, why don't we get a water coolers deployed? By that time, they are running water, but there was no coolers. Since water didn't run all day long, they'll fill the tanks. It was the same thing. They'll fill up the tanks, and the tanks are hot. Those are some of the small projects we've done, but now I'm doing 2 or 3 things. Our Chandigarh office, actually about 15 to 20% of people are from Himachal. I couldn't set up an office in Himachal and really attract anybody. It wasn't possible. But Chandigarh, you could. There's actually IIT that opened a few years ago in my home, a district town, Una. Okay. I'm getting involved in helping sponsoring with kind of stuff. Then this gentleman has opened a school, not a special system to get students special help to get them in colleges. I forgot the name of it. So trying them at a small scale, and hopefully next time try to help the state government of Himachal to get security and all this stuff. But it's always satisfying to be able to go back. The closer you are to the town, the more attachment you have, right? So,
Amitabh, this is what I was alluding to earlier. I think there's a role, whether it's for private or for government, to help find ways to guide that passion, enthusiasm, and money that's sitting in non-resident Indians to help more in India, because the demand is very, very strong.
Yes.
It's just sometimes they just don't know what to do in many cases. I was told that as the fake moderator, there's a question here I'm told to ask on.
Great. Do I have your permission, Amit?
I'll try my best to not get you in trouble. So from Chandigarh, actually we have 3 of us from Chandigarh here on this table. So very inspiring stories. And Amitabh, you're such a fantastic champion and cheerleader for India. We're all proud of you. I'm sure you get it all the time. Amitabh can't, but Amitabh can. On a serious note, if I got JG's comment right, maybe I just want to echo something. So we are from the manufacturing background, and it's very tempting and also very frustrating. Like, why can't we go partake in this phenomenal opportunity in India? But manufacturing for small to mid-size being such a complex thing, so many moving parts with infrastructure, talent pool, and policies, and all of that. So focusing on the skills and employability of young engineers relevant to manufacturing, maybe there is some more work to do there. If we could have a 20 to 80, maybe 80% on what can be done better and 20% on gung-ho and go forward. I think that will enable and welcome more of us to go back and immerse there. Yeah.
So I think that was more of a comment, right, than a question. But
Yes.
I think the last word should go to Jay.
Yes.
No, it's yours. Look, if you do ask me what do I do, how do I think about it, it start dreaming big. Okay, we don't dream big enough. It's good to dream big, and the reason we don't dream big is because we are afraid of failure. Okay, ability to take risk is a good thing, and the way I took risk was to think about what's the worst thing that can happen. Take, for example, the first company we did, Secure IT. My wife and I, Chaudhry, we went in together. So it was a tough decision. But it was that the common thing was, if we did the startup and put our life saving on the line, what's the worst thing that can happen? The company fails. Our savings disappear. And said, well, can we find a job? Of course we could find a job. That's not a problem. So if that's the case, then let's go. Do it. We have a backup plan. Right? I mean, some of those simple things, they do really help us. But being able to take chances and try, it's a very good thing. Tons of opportunity. I was in India 3 weeks ago. I came back so excited about what all can be done. I think somehow I feel like if some of these youths in India can be exposed to more of these opportunities, the things that can be done, they are actually willing to go the extra mile and succeed because, in fact, in some ways, when you come to America, about first generation, then second generation gets a little bit slow, sense of entitlement comes in, the third generation is kind of, man, right? In India, there's so many, they're all like first generation, most of them. If you exclude the 1% of the richest Indians, everyone else is willing to work hard and go the extra mile. If we can tap the potential of that thing, it'll help their families, it'll help the country, it'll help everyone.
Yeah, thanks. Wonderful.
Everyone, thank Amitabh, Jay for joining us. Amit, Richard, thank you for putting this together. Thank you for organizing it.